President Yoon Suk Yeol is heading to India on this Friday to attend the two-day Group of 20 summit, starting on Saturday, during which he's set to share Korea's commitment to curbing climate change and to promoting prosperity and regional stability. So what are the prospects of a tangible G20 stance against North Korea's security threats? Similarly, what issues look to unite and what issues look to divide the G20? And how do pundits rate the relevance of multilateral summits amid rampant global discord? Welcome to Issues and Insiders. Today we take a look at President Yoon Suk Yeol's agenda and more at the Group of 20 gathering, which is scheduled to start in India this weekend. For more on this, I have Professor Kim Hyun-wook from the Korea National Diplomatic Academy. Professor Kim, as always, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
I also have Professor Choi Hyun Jin from Kyung Hee University. Professor Choi, it's a pleasure as well.
Good afternoon, Sunny.
Right, Professor Kim, we'll start with you then. President Yoon Suk Yeol is poised to turn the spotlight yet again to North Korea's security threats during the G20 gathering in India. That being said, Professor Kim, do you foresee a statement from the participants of the latest G20 summit with regard to North Korean concerns?
I think there will be some exchanges of views, and maybe casually possibly they will announce something, but I'm not sure if there will be any official joint statement possible from the G20 not because of North Korea issues, but because many countries are not ready to have some, agreement on major issues like, climate change issues and war in Ukraine, things like that. So if joint statement itself is not possible, maybe North Korea issues would only be possibly dealt casually at the meeting. But I think, when we see what President Yoon Suk Yeol is doing, I think he's now trying to make the North Korea issues to be more global. I mean, because now Russia, China, North Korea, of course there are some discord amongst three parties, but still three countries are gathering together relatively compared to the US-based community. For example, US, Japan, and Korea, and those countries with democratic values. I think the President Yoon Suk Yeol is trying to pressure those countries, like Chinese and Russian leaders, because they are the ones who have very important role in passing the sanction measures at the UN Security Council.
Right, indeed. And Professor Choi, there is also quite a bit of concern here over a possible arms for food agreement between North Korea and Russia. Now, the US has warned North Korea about a price to pay if it seals such a deal. That being said, Professor Choi, what, in your opinion, might be the price that North Korea would be required to pay?
As you noted, the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is likely to visit Russia perhaps next week for a summit with Vladimir Putin to discuss arms deal. The North Korea could ask Russia to send more food, energy, and also advanced missile technology in return for supplying arms to Russia. So regarding this, the U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan sent a strong warning message to Pyongyang, as you said, saying North Korea will pay a price in the international community if it provides weapons to Russia. And yesterday also, the U.S. Vice President, Kamala Harris, also said it would be a huge mistake for Kim Jong-un if he assists Russia in its war in Ukraine. So she said this possible deal would further isolate both Russia and North Korea. So what is the meaning of this price? So it is not easy to predict the meaning of this price, but however, it is likely that they will include some stronger targeted sanctions against any individuals involved in or related to these possible deals between North Korea and Russia. And this targeted sanction will have a greater strength and also wider scope to disrupt any effort to use North Korea as a source for weapons going to Russia. And also, I'll give you one example that happened in 2002. So at that time, the U.S. Navy forces intercepted and searched a North Korean ship in the Arabian Sea. And this North Korean ship was carrying Scud missiles from North Korea to Yemen. I think this kind of event may happen once again if there is a possible deal between the two countries. North Korean ships can be intercepted and searched by American Navy forces if it is carrying some weapons to Russia.
Right, so I suppose we would be looking ahead to some very stringent measures from Washington targeting Pyongyang then. Professor Kim, this next question is one that I've been asking our researchers here in the studio during our sessions earlier this week. I'd like to direct the same question to our scholars today. What's the relevance of such multilateral summits like the G20 as well as the APEC coming up in November over the US amid this rampant discord among countries?
Yeah, I think the characters of those multilateral forums nowadays signifies that U.S. hegemony is getting weaker. I mean, before, under the very strong U.S. hegemony, a lot of international regimes, for example, G20, UN, and all those kind of groupings, for example, including APEC, has been pretty much well managed. Because the U.S. was the firm, strong hegemon that provided strong rule settings and rule of law and implementation of those rules to the members of the international community. But now things are getting complicated because the U.S. Is pressuring China because China is rising. Russia is now still in a war with Ukraine. So I think nowadays these multilateral forums are the ones and venues for these competitions among strong countries. For example, maybe in the G20, the Biden government will try to emphasize providing some assistance to developing countries vis-a-vis the One Belt, One Road policies of China. Might be visiting Vietnam after G20 meetings in order to gather those countries on the side of the United States to deal with China. And Chinese leader Xi Jinping and Putin is not participating in G20. So I think this clarifies that these forums are not very effective in coordinating a lot of countries' interests to deal with global issues nowadays.
Right. And Professor Choi, what are your thoughts? Do you believe that these forums are losing their relevance?
I somehow agree with Professor Kim, so I'm rather skeptical for the relevance of a G20, especially this time. So many media predict that it will be difficult to make a joint declaration at this G20 meeting in India. Also, there was previous G20 ministerial meetings as well, and this meeting ended without any agreement due to disagreements among members. And also, the leaders of China and Russia have pulled out of the summit as the war in Ukraine has deepened the divide between the Western and the non-Western camps. And this should suggest that this time China and Russia will not agree to joint statement at the G20. So last year, there was a G20 summit meeting held in Bali, Indonesia. And at the time, the G20 leaders narrowly adopted a joint declaration stating that most member states strongly condemn the war in Ukraine. And this is interesting because they condemn the war, not Russia. But however, this level of a joint statement is even difficult this time. If the summit ends in failure, and it will demonstrate the limits of Western and non-Western cooperation. And this is not a good news for dealing with global challenges such as war, the global supply chain, and climate change. And therefore, sadly enough, a global diplomatic conference like G20 is less able to deal with the common challenges when a world is divided like this.
Right, and keeping in mind what Professor Choi has said, Professor Kim, the world indeed, it's facing a host of challenges even as we speak. And that being said, what issues are likely to see some progress under the G20 this year, and what issues look to remain contentious, do you think?
Well, I'm not sure which issue will have some productive, construct. I see many agenda is pretty much having a lot of, hurdles in the meeting because, for example, the war in Ukraine, how to deal with it. I don't think it's easy to gather, countries, all the countries consent on stopping the war because. Maybe Xi Jinping is someone who needs to be in the meeting to agree on the war in Ukraine to be stopped. But I don't think he's there. And because now, Xi Jinping and Putin's relationship is getting worse and worse compared to the last year. So that kind of complicates how those countries at G20 will come up with the issue on war in Ukraine. And also the other one is that, food security issues. Many countries, I think, would expect food in Ukraine to be released in the international community. But that also needs some sort of revision of the Black Sea Agreement between Russia and Ukraine on the food security issues. So that which needs Russia's consent. So I think all these kind of issues pretty much is relevant to what Russia and China has opinion on. So I don't think many issues are really easy to have some significant agreement at G20 this time.
Right, and staying with such issues, Professor Choi, China's top agency has accused the Biden administration of being, and I quote, two-faced in its policy toward Beijing. What are your thoughts?
Yes, the Chinese agency that oversees the secret policy and intelligence accused the U.S. of being two-faced in its China policy. And they believe that American policy is two-faced because there have been some positive signals from a senior U.S. official recently. However, the basic direction of Washington's China policy remains unchanged. And therefore, they said that this is two-faced because the U.S. sent two different signals. And also, they argue that this kind of two-faced policy is doomed to fail as Beijing would not follow Washington's agenda. And they also ask the United States to show real sincerity before Xi Jinping attends the upcoming APEC summit in San Francisco. But however, this kind of a statement from the Chinese agency is not the one I can agree or disagree with. From American perspective, it is necessary for them to maintain some balancing actions against China because the world is deeply divided between the Western and non-Western camps nowadays. It is also necessary to reduce and manage tension with China to avoid a possible armed conflict between the two countries. And this shows that just the nature of diplomacy is two-faced. And also, I think there are few foreign ministers deliver real sincerity to their counterparts. In diplomatic world, it is often difficult to tell between propaganda and the true motivation. And therefore, this kind of complaint about Washington's foreign policy from Chinese part is very understandable and also very commonsensical. So therefore, I believe this kind of a Chinese comment shouldn't be taken too seriously.
Right. And talking about diplomacy, Professor Kim, the Yoon administration, for its part, it's hoping to host a trilateral summit, including, of course, South Korea, Japan, and China. Do you suppose the conflict between Beijing and Tokyo over the latter's Fukushima radioactive wastewater release will hinder the possibility of such talks? And if that is the case, Professor Kim, what can Korea do to facilitate these trilateral talks?
Well, I don't think China is that much active in opposing the meetings amongst China, Japan, and Korea because of Fukushima issue. Because China nowadays is very much docile towards outer countries, trying to be more charm offensive in its diplomacy. Because we see that Chinese economy is now in terrible shape. The young people's employment rate is also very bad. I think Xi Jinping doesn't have any domestic support to be hostile towards outer countries, including the United States. because so nowadays, of course, Biden government is very two-faced, as you mentioned, but I don't think he's really two-faced. We know that his policy never changed. He's trying to reduce any possible risks with China. Just want to manage the competition. Doesn't mean the competition itself has not changed because of domestic political issues. Now, Biden has a general election next year, and a lot of companies in the United States and Wall Street companies investing in China and exporting to China are very much, complaining about Biden's policies because they are losing their interest because of Biden's pressure toward China. So I think Biden needs to calm down those companies before he makes a successful, general election outcome. So I don't think his policy changed. Biden's very hostile and aggressive toward China. So from Xi Jinping's perspective, he just wants to manage current relationship with U.S. and with other countries very nicely. He doesn't want any frictions with other countries. So I don't think Fukushima issues will be such a big hurdle for a successful trilateral meetings amongst Korea, Japan, and China.
And if that is the case, then, Professor Choi, keeping in mind, of course, the Camp David summit, how does Seoul's strategic clarity, in terms of foreign policy, of course, look to affect its ties with Beijing?
To answer this question, I need to introduce one important change in China's policy. Recently, China allowed group travel to South Korea after it stopped issuing group visa to South Korea in March 2017 in retaliation for the deployment of a THAAD missile defense system. So this change came just 10 days before the Camp David summit, and this is seen as a form of some situation management by China in the face of growing US, Korea, Japan trilateral ties. And therefore, it seems to me that China was somehow concerned about marginalization in the international community if it further excluded South Korea and Japan. So in addition to the Camp David summit, the United States also launched a series of consultative bodies to contain China, including Quad, AUKUS, and also Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, and has recently been actively involved in Vietnam and the Philippines, which have maritime disputes with China. And therefore, there's no advantage for China if relation with South Korea further deteriorates. So therefore, the President Yoon met with the Chinese Prime Minister Li Qiang yesterday during the ASEAN summit. And during this meeting, the President Yoon emphasized that although there was some trouble between the two countries, there can be resolved through frequent meeting and exchanges. And also, South Korea will use this meeting as an opportunity for more communication between the two countries at the highest level and also between the leaders. And therefore, I believe this strategic clarity of the Yoon Suk Yeol administration can be an opportunity to improve relation with China.
Right, and hopefully you are right then. Moving forward, Professor Kim, the global gathering that I'm talking about, the ASEAN-related meetings that ended in Indonesia this week, and of course the upcoming G20 summit this weekend in India, as well as the APEC in the US, they're all centered on the economy. Having said that, can shared economic interests perhaps serve as a platform of sorts for greater security collaboration?
Yes and no, because yes means that, I think many countries, including the US and China, definitely want, global economy to be stabilized. After COVID issues and also after the US-China competitions, global economy is in a bad shape now. I mean, it's in transition period. The previous rules and norms that govern the global trade has changed into something different. New areas and new technology issues has been risen as the focus of many countries, based upon which a new global supply chain has been, reformed. So under these situations, there comes out a lot of complaints about members of the international community, how they deal with new global supply chains, things like that. So maybe the U.S. focus is to calm down those frictions based upon new global supply chain. But China maybe yes, but China I don't think is very much not satisfied with the U.S. lead in forming a new global supply chain. There is definitely a very big competition between U.S. and China about this new trend. So I think that will be the big trend for some time being from now on that a lot of global forums will deal with.
Right. And more on the national front then, Professor Choi, what are some of the pressing issues on the broader diplomatic front for the Yoon Suk Yeol administration?
I think the one important mission for the Yoon Suk Yeol administration this year is to use the close trilateral relation between Washington, Tokyo, and Seoul as a leverage to influence China. In fact, President Yoon urged China to play a responsible role in addressing the actions of North Korea. And also, the President Yoon spoke with the Prime Minister Lee Chang yesterday for the longest time in Indonesia. Their meeting lasted for about 51 minutes. So after taking a photo with the ASEAN Plus 3 leaders, Yoon also turned around as everyone was leaving and offered to shake hands with Lee Chang first. And this shows how important the Korea-China talk were to President Yoon. This time, also, Yoon called for increased cooperation and asked for China's cooperation in holding the Northeast Asian Trilateral Summit in South Korea between Korea, China, and Japan. And the biggest reason for this change in Korea-China relation is the close cooperation between U.S., Korea, and Japan, as symbolized by the Camp David Summit. So this trilateral relationship provided a solid backdrop for Yoon Suk Yeol to make specific requests for cooperation from China. And this is why President Yoon was able to say to China that if the North Korean nuclear issue is not resolved, the trilateral cooperation system will only become stronger. So President Yoon invited Xi Jinping through Lee Chang to hold a trilateral summit in South Korea. And if Xi does come to South Korea, it will be his first visit in 9 years. So if Xi Jinping visit goes through, the Yoon administration will have a chance to improve both the U.S.-Japan-Korea trilateral relationship and at the same time bilateral ties with China.
Right, of course, in hopes of easing tensions then in the region and beyond. All right, Professor Choi, as always, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you very much.
And Professor Kim, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Right, well, on that note, we end this week's editions of Issues and Insiders. Have a great weekend and see you same time next Monday.